Now in the last video I created a base structure with some foliage, and what I'm going to do in a similar style but different is this time I'm going to use a dried hydrangea. Now you might be thinking, oh for goodness sake Sharon, let's see some fresh flowers. Well, you are going to see some fresh flowers as well, but I've got this really pretty, again you might not like it, but I think it's really lovely. This is a dried hydrangea and it's almost gone in a skeletonized way. So skeletonized leaves were very popular in the 90s. This has gone like this on the shrub naturally as the bracts of the hydrangea have become wet and the petals have almost evaporated, leaving that vein structure in the middle. Now I like them because it picked up on the colour, the lighter colour of my container. But I've also got this hydrangea, which is more of a green shade. And I'm really torn between the two. You might not like my choice, but I'm going to go with this one because I think this is really pretty. And the whole point really of these tutorials is to encourage you to have a go with whatever you might be able to get hold of. And if you're in the UK or you have a similar climate to the UK, then you're going to have loads of hydrangeas that might have overwintered on the bush. This one is one that I've dried myself here in the studio. Not a fantastic colour, but I will probably spray that one and use it in a different arrangement. So let's get some water in that container first because it's not much good without any water. The shape that I'm naturally drawn to in this type of arrangement is like a crescent, but for this one I'm going to go more taller on the side and a bit lower in the front. And I'm going to start, let's see how much we need to cut off, with these dried skeletonized leaves of the hydrangea, and I'm going to place those a little bit shorter down in that container. Now this container is quite narrow, there's not a great deal of depth to it, so I might not be able to go as tall as I initially wanted, but I think these are pretty, and you're not going to see a huge amount of them when the design is finished. They're just there as your base structure. So I haven't used any floral foam, any sellotape, any wire netting, there's no plastic tubes or anything in there. This is what I'm going to use to hold my flowers into place. And I think it has a fabulous colour link with the pattern on the front. But I'm open to debate. I like to hear everybody's comments. I'm just thinking they need to be a bit compacter in the container, so I'm going to take just a fraction off the bottom so they sit more inside the container and there's no risk that they're going to topple out. And to introduce a bit of texture and a different colour, I'm going to put in some of the Hebe. Now this is a lovely garden Hebe. If you've got a garden, then this is a lovely one to grow in the garden. It's got a nice bit of texture, can be a bit fussy if it's used with a lot of small greenery, but it's got quite a nice shape and it's a really long-lasting flower. Now I could use this one in two different ways. If I wanted to create some side movement, I'm going to put it in a diagonal position or maybe a horizontal, but I want to create some height, so I'm just going to spin it, place it in the arrangement in that shape. Don't worry too much if things move around. They're not going to stay perfectly where you want them to go the first time, and it's just a case of playing around with things until they sit where you want them to go. Remember, if you're not arranging in foam, to leave the stems long enough to get to the water at the bottom, and make sure the stems are clean on the base. And don't panic if things are moving around. You can either adjust them as you go or you can leave them where they naturally fall. But what I'm looking to sort of do is cover the base but bring a little bit of height up on either side. And I'm not going to overthink it at this stage. We can adjust as we go along. We can create a really natural loose shape, or we can go a little bit more formal and compact. I'm going to try, if I can, with this one to go a little taller. It might not stay where I want it to go straight away, but that's roughly where I want it to go, so that we're creating a little bit of height. I'm not going to panic. I know so many of you tell me in comments that you get really frustrated when trying to arrange in chicken wire because nothing stays in the right position. And I would just say you're overthinking it. Relax, let the flowers speak for themselves. So what we're now doing is creating a bit of height. This twig, greenery, what we're going to call this nice branch, is actually left over from Christmas when I did wreath making classes. And this was the cedar. If I can link a photograph of it. It was a beautiful grey foliage. And when I took a Christmas display down from outside a shop, this is what was left of it. And the colour link for me with the base is really lovely. And that hyacinth base, oh, it's not a hyacinth, that hydrangea base is working really nicely to hold everything into position. It's not perfectly symmetrical on either side, but that's okay because that's not a look that I want. I'm all a bit tangled up here on the side because I've got some branches and twigs. Now I've been working on this facing you, so I have no idea what it looks like from the position you're looking at it from. So now it's time for me to turn it around. Oh, that's not too bad. Now I would like the sides to have been straighter, but I can't do straight sides when my material is naturally curved. So again, I'm not going to think about that. Now we've seen once, maybe twice before, the Garrya elliptica, and when I chose it the last time, or when I used it the last time, it was from a local area that I'd foraged for on my way into work in the morning. But this one, I'm proud to say, has come from my own garden. I've had it in the garden for probably 4 or 5 years, and I've not really been brave enough to cut it. I wanted the tendrils to grow really nice and long. And I'm almost going to create a cluster of them on one side. Now I've removed all of the greenery off these because I think it's got black spots. Now I don't know much about this shrub, but I have removed quite a bit of the greenery off it because it's looking really quite sad. But I don't want to hide the pattern on the front of my container, but I do want to dangle down some of those little tendrils. So I've gone off centre, then it's not going to hide the pattern on the front. And that I'll keep for another arrangement. And because there's a lot of that creamy sort of coloured hydrangea there at the front, I'm going to use a flatter leaf. So this is Camellia. This is going to contrast really well alongside the small leaf of the Hebe. It's going to give me a bit of a textural contrast and hide a little bit of that hydrangea, because I don't want it all massed at the bottom with one colour. I need that variation and that tints and tones. So I think that's come together really nicely. So if you are lucky enough to have lots of foliage in the garden, then you could just keep on going in this way, adding in different types of greenery. I know many of you are lucky enough to have evergreens in your garden, and if you haven't got what I call traditional greenery like this, if you're in a hotter part of the country, then you can do it with more exotic greenery. It's just, this is what I'm more familiar with. So I've created a little bit of a shape there. It's again a bit like a boat shape. I'm going to introduce you to Miss India. What do you think about that? This is a new variety for me. I've not seen this one before. I'm not saying it's new to the market. It's something I haven't been familiar with before. This one is called Miss India. Not everybody likes this sort of set of carnations that has this greeny colour on the underside because they think it looks dead and past its best, but it's meant to look like that. The lovely greenish tone on the outside is going to link really nicely with my container, so I'm quite happy with these. And I'm just going to rest them against the container. I'm going to try and go a little bit taller, but I'm not sure if there's enough mass in the bottom, if there's enough heavy material in the bottom to hold the weight of this flower, but we'll have a go. We'll see how tall we can go. It's quite a big flower, it's quite heavy, and it might not be supported in the hydrangea because obviously the hydrangea is dried and quite lightweight. But we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that behaves itself, if it's going to move around or spin about. What I can do if it doesn't stay in the position that I wanted to go is just add a little bit more greenery to the base. But I've got a couple of flowers to go and we'll see how we get on. So the lovely carnation, I'm going to balance it off on the other side with the same flower but at a different height. I don't want them perfectly matching, and my original plan was to go much straighter on the side, but I can't do it because that's not where my flowers want to go. and I'm not worrying about it. If I wanted it to be straighter, then I would have had to go with wire netting or some floral foam. But we're going to make do with what we've got. That one's going to cause me trouble, I can tell. So with flowers, you need to work from the smaller flower to the larger flower in the centre if you have an option. I've got just 2 different types of flowers today, carnations and a few roses. If you want to stick to seasonal flowers, then choose something from your garden, or you might want to use daffodils and tulips if you're here in the UK. This is the one that's causing me trouble, and I think what I'm going to do is just where I've put it into the base, I'll add a bit of extra greenery down there before I finish, and then it will hold nicely. And what I've aimed to do is that staggered line from left to right, almost like you would join the dots together so that your eye is travelling from one side to the next. And that is my basic shape. Let's have a look, see how it's going. Okay, so what I've unintentionally done is created quite a big gap here in the middle. So this one needs to come over. Again, I don't want it really straight in the middle because that tends to look a little bit artificial, but that's okay. This one is behaving itself at the moment, so I'm quite pleased. And then to complement Miss India, we've got some alchemy. So, oops, alchemy and a bit of ivy. So this is a rose called Alchemy. You will see me use this quite a lot because I love the colour on it. It's a sort of peachy apricot, and as it opens, it's a bit paler on the inside. Now, what I'm not going to do, you might not like it, is I'm not going to remove the guard petals on the outside because they have that nice green tinge to them, and it's going to pick up nicely on the carnation colour and the colour of my base. So I'm gonna leave it on, and because these are the bigger flower, these are going to be the focal flower, and they're going to be a little bit closer to the centre. Now I'm only going to use 3 in the middle, but if you had more flowers, then you can continue the colour up towards the outside. I think that one needs to be a bit shorter, and that is really going to tuck nicely down in the centre there. So you've got that nice little bit of tendrils down on one side, this stubborn little carnation that doesn't want to stay where I've put it. And what I can tell is because it's spinning around like that in the base, I just need to add a bit of greenery around it or some more of the hydrangea, and that will almost like lock it into place. And I think if you've been to flower arranging classes, you've been to night school, or you've trained to be a florist, we're so obsessed with creating perfect shapes, which you can do in floral foam. You've really got to give yourself a bit of a break and not worry too much about designs that aren't perfectly matching on either side. Go with the natural movement and the natural shape of the flower rather than trying to create those really solid geometric shapes. So my tip for myself for this arrangement would be to have put more greenery in right at the very beginning, and then I would have had a stronger network at the bottom, and these flowers wouldn't move around so much. But that is a really beautiful, well, I think it's beautiful, a really beautiful arrangement using some foraged greenery and some branches and twigs, some dried hydrangea that's been left over from last summer, and a colour combination that I think works really well with that dark green base. Now, I've been concentrating so much on creating this lovely design that I've forgotten to tell you to subscribe to the channel, because that's really important. It's what helps this channel grow, and it's what helps other people find us. I'm not quite sure how many videos I'll be able to do for Foam Free Friday, but we'll try. We'll see how many we can do. So that's the back of the arrangement. You haven't got to worry about having extra greenery to tuck in there and hide your foam. And you can keep adding to this design if you have more forage material or you have more greenery in the garden. So I hope you've liked that one. Don't forget to add a comment in the box below. Let me know what you think. Like and share with your friends and get everybody to join, because the more people are here, the more successful the channel becomes. So thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you for the next video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.